Welcome back to my lecture series on my fictional universe, Empyria. Let me clear my throat a bit. Alright, I'm good. So, as I said at the end of the first video, the introductory video, I will now get into the creation story of Empyria. The next 20 or so videos will be focused on me progressing through all the major events in my book titled, as you can see, The Legendary Scrolls. And if you can remember from the first video, again, please watch these videos if anyone watches them. Watch them in the right order, the order that I upload them. Anyway, at the end of the last video, well, near the end, I showed all the books of my book, explained that it's one book with 13 books inside of it. Now I will begin with book 1, titled The Account of Arcain's Creation. So, we first need to look at the timeline. Didn't mean to do that. Alright. Let's look at the timeline and focus on the creation. This is everything that's covered. It's really one moment in time. It's not even a whole year. This is everything that will be covered in this video. So we're really just beginning with the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. Horrible analogy, I know. Moving on. I'm not good with improv, okay? So, again, these videos are not meant to be super professional, like a professional podcast, be a pretty lame podcast with only one person. But this is just me giving a lecture series, okay? I've seen similar things on Twitch, where Twitch streamers will have a lecture series. Shout out to Professor Noctis on YouTube and Twitch. Kind of where I got the idea from on how to do this. But, again, not to the same par as that, obviously. I'm just some dude. I just work in ministry. I don't do a lot of cool, big things. But I'm just sharing my passion. Anyway, back to this. Book 1, titled The Account of Arcain's Creation. Let us begin. This is the first sentence, well, the first 3 sentences of my entire book. So, when these screens show up, it is quoting from my book, okay? Before time, there was only the Aether. Arcain always was, and Eula was always with him. Arcain created darkness, and he called it oblivion. So there was the Aether, and there was oblivion. Aether is infinite being, and oblivion is infinite darkness. Where Arcain is, there also is being. So, I've read this to some people have read it before, and they don't quite fully comprehend what this means. But it's the beginning, it's the very start of the entire story of my universe. Before time, meaning before there was a when, a past, present, or future, clearly, there was only the Aether, and Arcain and Eula were always together, eternity past. So I'm not going to get too much into this stuff right now, like the workings of these things, not until Book 3, The Workings of Syntha, which will come. That would be video number, I want to say, 4 or 5. So, for now, we're focusing on the narrative, what is happening. So we have Arcain and Eula, who are the god and goddess, the deities of this universe. Now, the real god is Trinity. 3 persons, 1 being. In my fictional universe, Arcain and Eula are 2 beings and 2 persons, so they're technically 2 gods. But instead of being a trinity with 3 people in love in an agape sense, like the Greek word agape, not romantic, but agape love, in this universe, the god and goddess are a duality, a unity of romantic love. So that is the foundation of the universe too, because the creator is founded on that kind of love within the god and goddess. So, Arcain and Eula were always in the Aether. And the Aether, simply defined, is the infinite, spaceless, timeless place, if you can call it that, in which Arcainula have always existed. It is the containment space for them. That's a poor choice of word, because it's not really containing them, it's just where they are. You cannot fathom it. Arcain created darkness. Let's think about that. The true God in our universe did not necessarily create evil or sin or darkness. And it's the same case here. Arcain, this isn't like some figurative spiritual meaning to the word darkness. It's just as it sounds. It's surface level. Arcain created literal darkness. He called that darkness oblivion. So it's a literal physical thing. Or it's an energy, actually, as we will get into in the workings of Sentha in the 4th or 5th video. So there's the Aether and there's Oblivion. So at some point before time, Arcain created Oblivion. So Oblivion isn't eternally existent into the past, like a line. However, Aether is. So how can Arcain create Oblivion, which is before time? How does he create something, meaning how does something begin to exist before there is time to have beginning to anything? Well, it sounds complicated on the surface, but in reality, it's not that complicated. Because before time, meaning there's not a world that has a time system. There's not a world that has the passage of days and years and all that kind of stuff. So Oblivion was created at an indefinite period of time before time as we know it was created with the universe. That is basically it. And Aether is infinite being, as I explained. So, and now Oblivion is also an infinite darkness. So therefore, anything dark that comes into the universe later has its source in the energy that is Oblivion, which existed before the universe existed. And the very last little phrase, wherever Arcain is, there's being. That's why the Aether exists. It's a something because it's where Arcain is. And it's eternal because Arcain also is eternal. Alright. Now, this, I have to explain some of this. This is a comic I drew in my free time when I was bored in a math class in, I believe, 11th grade. No, 10th or 11th grade. I can't remember. And I was bored in math class, and I wanted to draw out the creation story, the creation history of my universe. However, I'm just going to point this out beforehand, so I don't have to talk about it later. This says, if you can even read it, it's illegible, I know. Valens. I have since, I believe the year after I drew this, or shortly after I drew this, I changed the name of Valens to Espers. And you'll see that word soon. So there's also, this picture also is missing the two other Espers. Well, actually, let's see, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it's missing the other Espers, which we'll get to. Which we will get to. Enunciate. I'm sorry, I need to finish speech therapy, I swear. I never finished it in 1st grade. So, we're going to start. So this is basically all we've read so far. These first 2 panels. Now we're going to get to the very first thing that Arcain creates of the universe. And I'll be coming back to this as we go across the slides. So, Arcain created 2 great masses, one on top and one below. The one above was a cluster of white light, and the one below was a cluster of red light. Arcain spun them together, and he created a great divide between them, separating the white cluster from the red cluster. So, as you can see here, this is the white cluster. Again, I cannot draw. This is just scribbles, okay? And this is supposed to be the color red, because I drew with a pen. Because of course I did. So, a cluster of white light and a cluster of red light, okay? He spins them together, one on top, one below, going in opposite directions. And then after he spins them, he separates them like this, leaving a big expanse between the two masses of light. And then he shapes and fashions the big things of light into their own respective worlds. He names the one on top the world of white light, Amnia, and the world of fire he calls Helvan. Similar to the concept of heaven and hell, right? And then there's a big space in between the two. So throughout this lecture series, I will be using AI art generated using stable diffusion. And that's just to say and explain the fact that these images are not 100% accurate. Some of them won't even be 40 or 50% accurate, but they get a good image across, right? This is fairly accurate, except for the stars here in the background. There wouldn't be stars. There's nothing else in existence. It's just these two masses, right? And so he spins them together and then separates them, leaving a big space here like this. All right, so there's Amnia, and also I made some images by putting text over them and cropping them, but I did take them from the internet. So these are not my disclaimer. These are not my original pictures. I did not make these. And I will say which ones are AI, which ones are my drawings, original, and which ones are not original from me, okay? But they almost accurately portray the ideas I try to get across in these videos. That is their purpose. All right, so Amnia, Helvan. Amnia, Helvan. Amnia, Helvan. Got it? So this is the first part of the universe which Arcain created. All right, now we're going to get to the first sentient being ever which Arcain created, and the other first sentient beings. Arcain made Toniel from a speck of his light. At the same time, he made Kyphon from nothing. After that, he also made Argosax, Rechius, and the 7 Espers. These are the Espers which Arcain created: Angelus, Virga, Maya, Tenebris, Chaos, and Ravenera. Angelus, Virga, and Maya are Espers of light. Tenebris, Chaos, and Ravenera are Espers of darkness. So we have our official hierarchy of supernatural beings in the universe set up at the very beginning. Right after he creates Amnia and Helvan, he creates the beings which will govern and inhabit them. Alright? So, we need to focus on this guy, Toniel. Toniel is very, very, very important. I just drew this today. Again, I cannot draw, but these are just to get the ideas across in simplistic ways. I could not do this with AI art. It's not possible, honestly. If it is, it probably takes hundreds of words for a prompt, and it's not good. Okay, so we have Arcain here symbolically represented with infinity sign and light, supposed to be perfect, pure, infinite light. All right. So, as it says, Arcain made Toniel from a speck of his own light. And we'll get into how all of this works and the implications of it in the workings of Syntha. But we got a lot of history to get through first. But Arcain took a speck of his own light and shaped it into Toniel. Alright, now this has a lot of very important theological implications in this universe. What I mean by theology is Arcain's theology, not the real God. Alright, so that's this one sentence in a simplified drawing, okay? Alright, now we got a couple pictures I have that represent pretty accurately what two of the Espers look like. I can't find pictures for all of them. AI art failed me with this, because in my imagination they look one way, and AI art it's really hard to get it to look the same as my imagination. Now I also have this little icon I drew for two of these Espers back when I was in high school, because I was bored. It was from the same notebook I took these pictures from. So Angelus is the Esper of light and justice, and he is placed at the top of Amnia under the authority of Toniel. So Toniel is made the king and ruler of Amnia, the world of light. Like the king of heaven, almost. But in this world, okay? Now, the four beings, which Arcain creates here, the first four sentient beings are the precursors, alright? That capital P, precursors. You need to remember that title, precursor. Very important. They're the four created deities that are made to govern the entire creation for the rest of time, okay? And Toniel is the most important out of the four. So the four precursors are Toniel, Kyphon, Argosax, and Rekius. And then, of course, we have the Espers, the seven Espers. Angelus, Virga, Maya, Tenebris, Chaos, Ravenera. However, I forgot to mention this. Notice, it says 7 Espers. Alright? But there's 6 listed here. Haha. We will get to why the 7th Esper is omitted from this account in a later book. Alright? But it'll have to wait until book 9. Yes. Quite the distance to go for such a simple fact. Alright? So, where was I? Right, so, the Espers were each placed. So we have Toniel here, Kyphon, the other precursors created. This here is the Empyrean seat, which is basically just the seat for the Espers of Light, the 3 Espers of Light. For them, it's where they inhabit. Their spirits inhabit this place in the heights of Amnia. And then Toniel has his palace, where he sits on his throne over Amnia, which is called the Sanctuarium. Alright? Okay. And then Kyphon, he's given his own little space in some random dimension called simply Nowhere, with a capital N, because nobody understands where he goes when he's not around. But Toniel is the ruler of Amnia. Argosax is given dominion by Arcain over Healvan, so the world of fire. So he's basically the king of hell. But he's not bad. The precursors aren't bad, okay? Rekius is given authority over a place called the Soul World, which is a little bit below or in the lower parts of Healvan. And it's where, well, we'll get into all that when we get there. Never mind. I caught myself. Alright. So Angelus, Virga, and Maya, again missing from this, are placed up here in the Empyrean seat. Tenebris, Chaos, and Ravenera, again missing, is placed in the depths of Healvan in a special compartment of Healvan called Nihilia, or the Abyss. Alright? So those are the 4 precursors and the 6 Espers. The 7th Esper is omitted from, their name is omitted from pretty much all the legendary scrolls. The only way to know about them is if I mention them myself. Alright. So you can see here, we have Nihilia, the Abyss, Healvan, Argosax, the Espers of Darkness, Amnia with Toniel ruling over, and the Espers of Light. Alright? So Angelus is the Esper of Light and Justice, Virga is the Esper of Light and Purity, and then Maya is the Esper of Light and Gaia. Now, what is Gaia? We'll get into that in Book 3, and a little bit in Book 2. We'll see. And then here's Animorba, which is the Soul World. So there's like 3 supernatural afterlife kind of realms in this universe, not just 2. And Rekius, the 4th precursor, rules over Animorba. And again, Kyphon is unique. He's kind of just doing his own thing in Nowhere. Literally. It's called Nowhere. Because he is the precursor whom, I forgot to mention, Kyphon is the precursor whom Arcain created out of the nothing called Oblivion. Alright? So in the text, when it says he was made out of nothing, it's very specifically focused on that because he was technically made out of Oblivion itself. So Toniel is the precursor of perfect light, which is called Sentia. Don't have to remember that for now. We'll get into it in Book 3. And Kyphon is made out of Oblivion. So the 2 opposing light and dark. Perfect light, perfect dark. Right? Very important. And the other two precursors aren't really much of a focus through most of the entire book, honestly. Even the movies, especially. Because they kind of keep to their duties as precursors, and they, he overwatches Heelvan, the souls there, and Rekius overwatches the soul world and their souls. So, alright, so that's the creation of the precursors, the Espers, Amnia, Heelvan, and the soul world. Alright, this is Tenebris. I forgot. So, this is Tenebris's picture. I think it's a good representation, except a little bit too human of a face shape. So I had to include this. He's not an octopus. It's supposed to be like fiery hair, but not made of fire, made of darkness. Okay. And Tenebris doesn't really have a set, like a form with contours and a set shape to his form. So, then Arcain said, after creating all those things, let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters to separate the waters below the expanse from the waters above the expanse. So there is an expanse in the midst of the waters, and Arcain called the expanse heaven. Sound familiar to anyone? It's supposed to. This is directly pulled from the Bible, because I highly value it. And I used to be obsessed with creationism and Genesis in high school. So I wanted my universe, when I created it, to have a similar creation method, so to speak. Not similar story, but similar way of creating the earth that the real God did. Because I couldn't think of a better way that makes sense, right? So Arcain creates the heavens and the earth in this universe, similar to how the real God did in our universe. So keep that in mind. If you hear, oh, this sounds like the real Bible, it's supposed to, kind of. It's supposed to be the scripture for the people in my universe, written by these people in the universe. Now, the next video, I will explain how they knew how the world was created to write this. I will explain how it was revealed and written down. But that's for the next video. That's for the next video. Good, I can speak. Alright, now what does this look like? Boom. This was something I created on Adobe Illustrator as a vector image back in high school. Unfortunately, because it was saved as a normal JPEG image, I can't zoom in all the way, and it doesn't maintain all the quality and the resolution. So there's a bunch of stars here that are really small, like little white dots, but they're not appearing on this image. So just imagine it. Just know that they're there, okay? So, let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters. So I forgot to mention, specifically, here, after all of this, right after all of this, Arcain creates something called the Great Deep. And he sets the big ball of water in the middle of the expanse. In the middle of this expanse. Right here, okay? That's where this big ball of water is placed. Alright? No galaxies, no stars, not that kind of universe. So he said, let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters to separate the waters below from the waters above. That's what this looks like. This is what that looks like. So we can't read it because of the quality, of course. This says the Great Deep. So Arcain created it like this. His spirit hovered over the waters, just like in Genesis. And he brightened the waters, made them bright on the outside, not on the inside. So the surface of the waters are glistening and glowing with Arcain's light. And then he says, let there be an expanse. This expanse is made. These are the waters below the expanse. These are the waters above. Now, this is a 2D diagram of a 3D thing that's happening. So this is spherical, not 2D, not a circle. Alright, he keeps stretching out the expanse. So he calls this expanse heaven. And see, the waters below remain the same size as they were. And then it gets bigger and bigger. He keeps stretching it. You can barely see it, but the earth is in there. Well, what becomes the earth is in there, the waters below. And then eventually... I should say this. If I could zoom in all the way, you would see little continents on this planet. Because before Arcain creates the stars, the sun, and the moon. He creates the land out of the oceans and from the waters below. Then after the land is created, he then creates the sun, moon, and all the stars. So now the sun is there. It actually is. It's a little yellow dot on Adobe Illustrator. And then this is filled with all the stars, okay? Now, in this universe, stars are not as big as real stars. They vary in size from the size of the moon to the size of the Earth. Therefore, they are not as far apart from each other as real stars are, because they don't need to be, and therefore, they are all in closer proximity to the Earth, the sun, and the moon than real stars in our universe. Much, much closer, so that they can be visible in the night sky of the Earth. Okay. Also, the moon that Arcain created is craterless, because why would there be craters, right? There's no asteroids or comets or meteors. So it's a craterless moon, and the sun is a little bit smaller than our sun. So the Earth is a little bit closer. But that's all there is. It's just the sun, the Earth, my Earth. We'll see the continents, the maps of the continents in the next book. It's just the Earth, the moon, the sun, and stars. And then there's waters above. And the waters within it, like on the inner shell of the waters, it's dark. But the outer shell, they radiate outward. They're bright. Alright? After Arcain does that, and he creates the sun, moon, and stars, and sets the Earth in orbit around the sun, his spirit, let's see if I have it written here. Alright, not yet. His spirit goes over the lands of the continents and forms out of the Earth all kinds of plants, biomes, and the animals for each biome. Dragons, fantastical creatures that I made up, normal everyday creatures from our world, all kinds of varieties of life and plants. Alright, so he creates life on the Earth after he creates the sun and moon and stars. So it's reversed from the Genesis account. Alright? And then, now that the heavens and the Earth are finished, without mankind, so they're not really finished, but after that, he calls all of it together, the heavens and the Earth, Ovissa. So from now on, keep note, that is what this world is called, Ovissa. The Earth, the sun, moon, and stars, and the space of all that is Ovissa. Keep remembering that. Ovissa, Ovissa, Ovissa. Alright? Now Arcain's spirit was over a large basin, which is now called the land of Emek. His spirit descended into the land, and the tall trees blew in the wind. Then Arcain said, "Here shall I make man. He shall fill the earth and subdue it, and he shall have dominion over all the beasts of the earth, and of the sea, and of the air." Includes dragons of all kinds, by the way. So Arcain formed man out of the dust of the ground and forged him a soul. Then Arcain placed the soul into the man, and the man became alive. Arcain named the man Auden. So this is the Adam of my universe, Auden. Auden and his wife, whom we'll meet soon, they both are like olive skin tone, kind of brunette skin tone, and they have vibrant, lush colored green eyes and like auburn brunette hair, very thick, luscious brunette hair. Of course, because they're the first humans, so they have a lot of genes in them to spread all kinds of ethnicities later on. Anyway, so that's Auden. This is the creation of the first man, and there's something very unique that happens. Oh, first, I need to explain what this land looks like. The land of Emek, I'll show you the maps later, is the whole land is a giant basin, meaning it's a giant piece of land that's lower than all the land of the continent around it, and it's surrounded by waterfalls. So waterfalls from all sides feed into the edges, the borders of the land of Emek, because it's one big basin, and the entire basin is a giant rainforest and a giant jungle, okay? And the very, very tall trees, taller than real world trees, most of them. Alright? So cities are built in them, villages are built in them eventually in the future. So Arcain descends into this land, in this basin. It's like a holy land later on in history. And his spirit descends like a big tornado, and he forms out of the dust Auden, and forges him a soul, which is only something the creator himself can do. Alright? That needs to be remembered too. So we have the creation of Auden, the first man. Next, this is unique compared to the Genesis story, because this is a fantasy world. It's not meant to be all from the Bible, obviously. Behind Arcain came his servant, Eula. She's like the goddess, remember? She said unto him, Behold, you have created man in your image. Now I, Eula, shall make woman in my image, to be the man's helper and companion. So Eula formed a woman from the dust of the ground beside the man. And Arcain forged the woman a soul also. See, only Arcain can forge souls. Eula named the woman Adia after the man Arcain had made, meaning it's inspired by the name Arcain gave to Auden. Auden, Adia. So, in this universe, man and woman are both formed out of the dust beside each other. Alright? Now, we've gone through the creation of the great deep and the creation of Ovissa. Alright? So now we have the earth created with everything in it and everything in the heavens within Ovissa, again, within Ovissa. And now we have Arcain, who created man in the land of Emek, and Eula, who created woman. Alright? Auden and Adia. So now Ovissa is finished. So Auden and Adia live peacefully together in the land of Emek. Arcain called the heaven and the earth Ovissa. Okay. Now this is the universe. Okay? There's one last major... let me adjust the mic a little bit. I don't know if that did anything. There's one last major part of the creation that is yet to be created, and let's jump into it. We got a picture here representing Ovissa. This is the real Earth, but I can't find a picture of the Earth with the continents that I made up on it, okay? So, just ignore the North American continent there. It doesn't make sense in this universe. Also, ignore the Earth that has craters. Alright. So, after these things, the spirit of Eula was hovering over Ovissa, like this. Around the equator, so to speak. It's not a planet, but, you know. The spirit of Eula was hovering over Ovissa, and Eula created a ring of golden light, which ran around Ovissa. Eula called this space Aresta. Eula created many worlds within the currents of the space of Aresta, and she called them Rima Orbis. Those worlds are now called rift planes. No one calls them this. This is just what Eula called the worlds in here. Now we need to explain what are rift planes. This is essential before we go any further. So here's Aresta. This is kind of how it might look if you were in the space of Aresta. Now in Aresta, you can actually breathe in this space, unlike Ovissa. Big difference. Alright, time to explain how a rift plane works. Now, we all know what a planet is, how a planet works. It's spherical, it's a ball, you know, it has a core, it has gravity pulling into its core, and it has an atmosphere, it orbits something. Pretty basic stuff. We know what a planet is. Now, this is a rift plane, which is something I made up entirely. Alright, it's kind of simple, but what makes them, where they exist, is not simple at all, as you'll see. So we have here, this is Aresta, which runs around Ovissa. Within that space, it looks like this. So the space of Aresta has like stars, like let's just say these are like the stars. However, they are not stars. They are portals of light that look like stars from a distance. But if you get close to one, it's just a big translucent, reflecty, like wavy, golden portal. An orb, a golden portal, okay? So you go up to one, and then you enter it. If you enter one of those portals, then you enter the sky of a rift plane, like this. So we see here, this is within the portal, and it separates the sky of the rift plane from the space of Aresta like a pocket dimension. So a pocket dimension, like this, is an entire dimension or world contained within a space within the world itself, but in a space that separates it visibly and physically from the world that it's in. Kind of complicated to explain. So basically, we have here, if you're here on the surface of a rift plane, and you look up, the sky is blue during the day, and it's black at night. And here, the entirety of the sky of every single rift plane is basically one large naturally formed rift portal. We'll get into rift portals in the second book, okay? So where the rift portal is, so where you'd go past it to leave the dimension, and where you enter to enter the dimension, the pocket dimension of the world, and also the entirety of the land of every rift plane. If you were to take our real Earth's continents, put them all together, and shape them into a perfect circle on a flat disk, however big that is, however many miles across that is how big every rift plane is, okay? And every rift plane, they're not biologically, they're not like diverse with biomes like Earth is. Each of them is their own individual type of land and biomes and stuff. And I'll show you pictures later. So how do I explain this cohesively? Basically, the sky right here, it's blue, right? So it's the blue part of the portal that makes it look like a sky, like on a planet. And it's blue, there's clouds, all throughout this portion of the sky. But as you get to the top where the actual portal is, the boundary, you might say, it's made up of portal energy, because it is a portal, so it's gold. So you'd pass through, everything would be blue, super blue, really bright blue, and then everything would turn bright, shining gold, and that's how you know that you're so high up that you're about to leave the rift plane. Alright? Now, here's the thing about rift planes and the portals to them. Within the space of Aresta here, right here, these portals, there's billions of them. There's billions, hundreds of billions maybe. Alright? But there's only 14 rift planes. So a lot of them go to the same rift plane, and a lot of them go to other rift planes, okay? But we'll get into that when we talk about technology, and I believe it'll be video number 15. Yeah, I have them all planned out. The introduction video does not count. This is the first video. Video number 15 will explain technology, and we'll talk about how people explore the space much, much later in history, thousands of years later. For now, this is all you need to know. This is a rift plane. Hopefully this explains well enough what rift planes are. Alright. Now, this is one of the rift planes Eula created. I'm going to show you what all the rift planes look like, but I'm not going to give you the names of the rift planes yet, because they haven't been discovered by mankind yet. They haven't been named yet, okay? So this is one rift plane. This is the next rift plane. Alright, it's a land of floating continents. Again, this is all AI art generated, so it's not 100%. This one's pretty close. This one, not so much. The continents are much higher up from the ocean. Nobody lives on the ocean in the future. All the continents are much bigger than this, and they're full of pine tree forests, okay? And some mountains, but not a lot. We have this rift plane, one of my favorites. We have this rift plane. Next, 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 next. This world is supposed to be filled with basins and plateaus with basins in them of water and swamps in the basins. Unfortunately, AI art did not know how to do that. Apparently, it doesn't know what a basin is. That's cool. We got this one. This one is not... This was the hardest one to get AI to understand. So it's a world of tar oceans. It kept generating real water, and it wouldn't generate tar as an ocean, as an ocean. And the land of this world is more like granite colored, like grains of granite, and sometimes white soil. It's not all white like this. And there are bigger land masses in the world, not a lot. It is a lot of islands like this, but there are bigger land masses, and all the land, they have these giant structure, like these giant rocks that protrude out of the soil that look like rib cage like bones from a rib cage, but they're not bones, they just look like it. So eventually in the future, when people discover them, they call those types of rocks bone rock. One word, bone rock. Alright, this is another world, also very difficult to generate. It's a very complex world. This is another one. Eventually, floating cities will become the normal way of living in this world. Long after my book, though. Alright, so those are the rift plains. 14 rift plains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 rift plains. 7, 7, 14. Alright, so here, just as a little recap, this thing keeps moving on my mic, sorry. Just as a little recap, we have the planet Arcain, which is what it is called in the future. Arcain means old world. For now, it's just referred to as Earth until death enters the world. We'll get into that. So we got the sun, stars, moon, and the Earth, Arcain. And that's all in Ovissa. And then in Arvesta are all the portals of light that lead to 14 that lead to one of 14 pocket dimensions called rift plains. Alright? Moving on. So, Eula spirit was in the trance of Arvesta. Eula created many rift plains within the trance, right? So, this is her creating all the portals that lead to the rift plains that she already made within the space as pocket dimensions, okay? And then Eula, she kind of like created 4 beings in her image. She's kind of separated parts of her spirit, kind of like Arcain did with Toniel, but not to the same extent. They're called the daughters of Eula because they came directly from her, and they're called the 4 elementals. So they are kind of like espers, but since they're not created by Arcain and given dominion and authority over Amnia and Hilvan, like the precursors and the espers are, they're not called espers, but practically they have the same kind of nature, right? And power. So there's Iris, the fire elemental. She has like a long ponytail that's dark brunette hair, and then she has fiery red eyes, of course, and kind of tan skin. And then we have Ahira, who has long like sapphire blue hair and blue eyes. Obviously, she's the water elemental, pretty clear. Vera has 2 long, like twin tails, very long twin tails that are in silver hair and silver colored eyes. So she is the wind elemental. And then we have Eva, the earth elemental. She has long blonde hair and glowing green eyes. Alright. So, with the creation from Eula, with Eula finishing her creation of Arvesta with the rift plains and the 4 elementals and their elemental realms, she returns to Arcain. And now all of Empyria is finished. So, when Eula had finished making the worlds within Arvesta, the rift plains, as well as the 4 elementals, she returned to Arcain, to his side. Now Arcain's creation was finished, and he called his creation Empyria. So Arcain called my universe Empyria. After Empyria was finished, Arcain and Eula left the creation, take note of this, and gave the precursors authority over Empyria. And that is the very last sentence of Book 1, the account of Arcain's creation. So Arcain is like a deist god. He created the world, but he gave it 4 deities to overwatch it for all of its time. And those are the precursors. Specifically, Toniel is the highest precursor. He's the king. So we need to remember Toniel. He's very important, central. Alright, so now we have all of Empyria finished. We have Amnia with Toniel ruling from his sanctuarium, and then three espers of light in the Empyrean seat. We have Ovissa, with the sun in the center, the stars, and the Earth orbiting the sun with its craterless moon. And the Earth is called Arcain, with its continents. And Auden and Adia are going to begin their family and spreading throughout the Earth from the land of Emek. And then we have Aresta, the ring of golden nebulous light that runs around Ovissa, full of portals of light that lead to pocket dimension worlds called rift planes. Then we have Heelvan, which is like hell, where Argosax, the precursor, rules over. And then we have at the very bottom here, not on the image, two lower compartments of Heelvan. The Soul World, where the precursor Rekius rules over. And then we have Nihilia, or the Abyss, where the Espers of Darkness are. And there we have it. That is the creation of Empyria. Next video, we will begin part 1 out of 3 of the Book of Primitus, Book 2 of the Legendary Scrolls. I hope that you will continue following me on this journey. It was fun for this first official video, and this was the Legendary Scrolls, Book 1, the account of Arcain's creation. See you in the next video.